coming up in the morning session and today. We are going to have 4 films. I'm not going to sort of read out the detailed synopses and so on because you must all have already read those, and if you haven't, then let the films surprise you and do their own work. The first film today is by Satchith Paulose. He's the director of Give Us This Day Our Daily Bread. And unfortunately, he was to be with us, but he can't make it. He's stuck somewhere traveling between Jaipur and Pune, I believe, at the moment. I just spoke to him. Kislay, the director of HAMARE GHAR, which is the second film, also has not been able to make it. But instead, we have his cinematographer, Ishit, with us, and he'll be joining us for the discussion. Nishtha Jain, the director of At My Doorstep, the third and last film of the morning session, is probably at the FD gates as we speak, I hope. She will be here. And we have KP Jayasankar to moderate and be a discussant in the session, the discussion that will follow the 3 films. I'll introduce everybody a little more and a little better when we have the discussion. So for now, let's just start.
He's such an ass, We bored meeting, man. He kept saying, our vision is. He was saying it's a vision. Vision.
Seriously? So we tell them she's my younger sister.
Yeah.
What, Raj? She is like the family.
याद बहुत आता है अपना गांव, जहां मैं अक्सर बैठा करता हुआ था पीपल का छांव। याद बहुत आता है अपना गांव। ठंडी हवा की झोंकों में सोचा करता रोज नया दांव। याद बहुत आता है अपना गांव।
In my discussion with you, I understand that, obviously the film kind of, takes this look at our own lives, but I gather from the discussion with you that, your involvement in the issue goes beyond the film, and that you've been involved in organizing the workforce in FTI, and probably you could start telling us a little bit about the kind of concerns that impelled you in making this film, and the kind of your involvement in the larger politics that kind of is part of the film.
I'm not the director, I'm the cinematographer for it. Kislay, my classmate, he's an editing student in the same batch. So when we joined the Film Institute in early 2010, we joined a place that was kind of in utter chaos, and I wouldn't completely go for the fact that it isn't also to a certain extent right now, but the fact was that apart from issues of overcrowding and overbatches and stuff, there were certain basic facilities, even for the working people who are the labor class, that weren't in place, that we kind of gradually felt more and more as we were doing our projects. And as a cinematography student and him as an editing student, while we were doing a lot of projects in the studio that's on campus and everything, the students itself seemed like taking for granted a lot of things with reference to the lighting unit that was there, the light boys who were present, pushing their limits in terms of if a shift is 8 hours, going for 12 to 13 hours, sometimes 14 hours, them definitely not getting overtime paid for it. There's been shoots being stopped now and then because light boys want to go on strike. It was a very, very sort of unpleasant atmosphere to work on certain sets again and again from a playback shoot to a diploma shoot, and it was kind of it kept on building up, and that was a certain trigger point to look at people who are kind of working with us and the situations they are in. It further went on to the fact that both of us were in Delhi researching about a particular subject there, where he managed to visit, and there's a slight reference in the film also when the television is on, where the general manager of the Maruti was assassinated, and I mean the whole news that was cropping up at that time. So in Manesar, went to the factory, spoken to the laborers there, talking to the workers there, and that was the starting point of writing the film that you saw right now. It took a while. It took a while of certain observations of our own homes, of details from our own home, but at the same time, it wasn't a project that was kind of an institute project, or it had support from any other thing. It was kind of just us with our own cameras, with our own little equipment that we had, and there was a story that we had to kind of reflect upon, and we made sure we went ahead and tried to do it. So it was a very, very small effort, just about a 4-day shoot to bring all of it together. There are technical aspects of it that I won't get into it right now, but in this whole process, there was a larger student body involvement that happened on campus. There literally a whole movement to fight for certain rights, because the institute was almost going towards being privatized, and there were all these workers would have changed, and I mean there were multiple levels of things happening on that scale, which was stopped by the student body, by the alumni coming back, by certain senior faculty joining into the movement. And then finally, the wages were raised. I mean, they were much below even the minimum wages that were there on campus, and that was one of the steps that was quite encouraging in one way to it. Of course, it doesn't completely change the mindset of the students as well, which is a recurring issue as well. But that kind of was the starting point of all of it. If that gives a brief background to all of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nishtha, I mean, your film kind of brings people, subjects who are never part of the dominant narrative of the city. They are the invisible kind of workforce that actually makes the city run. What are the kind of challenges that you face in, conceptualizing the film and identifying, and how, for example, how you bring them with a lot of dignity on screen? I mean, if you could talk a little bit about that context.
At My Doorstep was very much in dialogue with my earlier film, Lakshmi and Me, where I'm also part of that gaze. I mean, when I'm looking at Hamare Ghar, actually, it was really a story that I was showing off Lakshmi, and I'm the employer, and so that film panned out in a certain kind of a way. While I was making that film, I thought it was very important to look at, also because that film is shot in my own home. I could not really capture what is outside, and then there are all the other men, they don't enter your homes, and then there's the same relationship that you have with all the other people who service these societies. So around the same time, I started also working on this film. They are stylistically very, very, very different films. I don't think I'm there that much, and in At My Doorstep, I'm there. I mean, the reference point, the beginning point is myself and the people who come to my doorstep, but I don't, really enter the film like as much as I do, in At My Doorstep. So that was important in terms of stylistically how I was putting this film, to also tell a larger story of Bombay, migrants, men, so it's like several stories. And a lot of people come also because Bombay, and they still have this dream of cinema. And the other idea that I was thinking of was that these stories have actually become invisible, but they weren't so invisible, say, in the 40s or 50s, where the working class was still very much the subject of Bollywood, like if you see in Raj Kapoor films. So there's a lot of kind of a reference to Avara and Shri 420 in terms of sound, and which I've just directly lifted, so it's not a very subtle reference, but yeah, it's there. So because that narrative is anyway gone out of the dominant cinema in any case, and these people are not part of the dominant narrative. They're invisible. So that was the beginning point of the film. But how would I do this film? This film was the most difficult to do because actually I wasn't allowed to shoot at all in my, I had to come up with many pretexts. One pretext was, can I shoot the Independence Day? And then they allowed me, so I would be allowed to shoot for 2-3 days, and then they would stop me. They said, no, 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 but what are you trying to show through this film? And they would not let me enter into a housing society. And they clearly saw this film as something that wasn't going to portray them, even though I tried to discuss it with them in any kind of, I think, I don't know what it was, but they were already guilty of the fact that there is something happening here, and they won't allow. Plus the people themselves, their jobs are so precarious that I would shoot a scene with Ghayal, and then he would disappear. And then he will appear again after a few months. So it was very difficult. Then we decided that we will have to, tell his story in a much more stylized way, which we can shoot over a period of 1 night or 2 nights, because I could never really do the documentary stuff with him, because before I could do it, he would disappear. He would have lost his job. So yeah, I mean, that was a story that I was trying to tell through these men, and it's interesting how the women seem to be much more proactive than the men are, and that always fascinated me. Women are holding up their homes, while the men tend to get into, I don't know, this sort of an emaciated sort of a state, either because their manhood is questioned because of being in this kind of a position, etc., that I found that the women who were migrants and were working as domestic workers far more proactive about their lives than the men were. And men were, prone to alcoholism or depression or whatever in a lot of these cases.